I will call to order the joint meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners and the Planning Board on this third day of November 2025. If you would, please stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
All right, motion by Commissioner Carpenter. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Who wants it? All right.
Alex.
Commissioner Patton, any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, so it is approved. We are going into public hearing, or public zoning. So next on the agenda, first case of the planning board will hold the joint meeting, and the conclusion of these hearings, the planning board will deliberate and bring the recommendation. The next meeting, which will be on November the 17th, 2025 at 10 a.m. At this time, I will ask Ms. Gilbert to give us some information concerning zoning cases.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So tonight we will be hearing a quasi-judicial matter and a couple legislative matters. So legislative hearing is a forum for expressing a public opinion about a project. A quasi-judicial hearing is considered an evidentiary hearing where the board must make a finding of fact as enumerated in the Unified Development Ordinance. More importantly, these findings must be based on competent, substantial, and material evidence in the record. Anyone wishing to speak at a quasi-judicial hearing must be sworn in. So I need to confirm that no board members on either board have a conflict of interest in regards to the cases before us tonight. No member shall participate in or vote in a manner that would violate the applicant's constitutional rights to an impartial decision maker. Impermissible violations of due process include a member having a fixed opinion prior to hearing the matter that is not susceptible to change, undisclosed ex parte communications prior to any quasi-judicial hearing tonight, a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with the applicant, or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Does any board member have such a conflict?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, and then after the applicant has their say, we'll open it up to public comment. And as an individual, you get 3 minutes. As a group, you'll get 5 minutes. But as a group, the group needs to be present and accounted for. So, Jeremiah, you have the floor.
Good evening, Planning Board members, Commissioners. Tonight's first case is a request to amend the terms and conditions of Plan Development number 2014-2. This is amendment number 7 that's proposed here tonight. The applicant, Fund 28 Denver LLC, is requesting to amend the terms and conditions for the Rivercross Plan Development Mixed Use District. Specifically, their proposed amendment is to remove the requirement of constructing a northbound left turn lane on Triangle Circle at Optimus Club Road. The Rivercross Plan Development was initially approved in February of 2015. The master plan included a 73.9 acre site for detached homes and townhomes, a 12.5 acre site for 228 apartments, and a 29.3 acre site for 100,000 square feet of commercial development and 40 townhomes. Subsequently, as I alluded to, this is the 7th proposed amendment. There have been 3 approved amendments in September 2016, November 2017, and May of 2018. None of those 3 approved amendments involved this portion of the project, the commercial portion with up to 100,000 square feet of commercial development and 40 townhouses. The required off-site roadway improvements for each of the completed phases of the development have been installed. The remaining off-site roadway improvements must be completed as part of the development of this 29.3 acre commercial site. Pursuant to section 9.8.7 of the Lincoln County Unified Development Ordinance, which envisioned scenarios like this. The applicant is requesting the Board of Commissioners remove the requirement to construct the northbound left turn lane on Triangle Circle at Optimus Club Road due to their inability to acquire the necessary right-of-way to deliver that improvement. With the application, the applicant has provided a summary of their efforts to obtain the property necessary for the dedication of public road right-of-way for that turn lane, and a summary of the community involvement meeting that was held on June 23rd of this year. The planning staff is recommending approval of this request. You have our proposed statement of consistency in your packet, and I believe that's all I have for you. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to help.
Anyone have any questions for Jeremiah?
So Jeremiah, looking at the map, this is going to abut with some PDMU. It looks like those are houses. Am I correct? Or is that the apartments? I have not had the time to drive down there.
So on Hazel Way and Ashton Park Drive, is that the area that you're referring to,
Yes,
Commissioner?
sir. Yes, sir.
Those are townhomes, and
Okay.
they're part of this master plan development.
Okay. And the left turn there, the turns that they want to make are not being authorized because the owners are saying, no way, Jose.
The applicant has indicated that they've been unsuccessful in their attempts to acquire the right-of-way necessary to install that turn lane.
Are they the original owners, or did they buy this project and this property?
No, this property has, the current owner has purchased this within the last several years.
Well, I guess, are they the original developers?
No,
So they bought this from some other development? Okay.
correct.
And why does the staff think this is a great idea?
So the ordinance does, as I alluded to, does include this provision. It envisions scenarios like this where, the modeled improvements necessary to mitigate the impacts of this development at that studied intersection, if they can't be delivered because the applicant can't acquire the right-of-way necessary to install that turn lane, then it requires that we bring the applicant come back to the board to ask for approval of the development without that turn lane.
So NCDOT, what is their opinion of all this?
NCDOT has been receptive to this. There have been discussions about signalizing that intersection. The original terms and conditions require that once necessary, once DOT warrants that signal, once it meets the warrants for signalization, if DOT at that time determines that it's appropriate to signalize that intersection, then the applicant is responsible for signalizing it. We've had discussions with DOT about what's the timing look like for that. They're not interested at this time in signalizing that intersection at any point in the near future, is what they've expressed to us. I think the applicant has certainly had more discussions with DOT than our staff on that topic, because logistically they've got to figure out how to work through that and meeting that condition. But for the purposes of tonight's hearing, it's solely focused on the applicant states they can't acquire the necessary right-of-way for the turn lane, and so they've asked for relief from that required turn lane. NCDOT has stated that they're okay with it.
What's the DOT right-of-way through that road?
I believe the applicant can speak better to that than
Okay.
I can, because I think there's a little bit of history there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that they don't hardly have any right-of-way to that because they go to the middle of the street as opposed to, according to your documents,
Yeah.
they go to the middle of the street, and it's not like a normal kind of a right-of-way thing.
I believe the applicant can speak to their efforts in title searches and determining what right-of-way has or has not been dedicated over the years. So I think whatever right-of-way, public right-of-way DOT does have, it, from the sound of it, is not recorded right-of-way, it's reputed. But again, I believe the applicant's counsel will be able to speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Jeremiah? All right, we'll bring the applicants up. If you would state your name and address when you get to the podium, please.
Yes, I'm Brad Bowman, manager of Fund 28 Denver, LLC. Address is 19701 Bethel Church Road, Cornelius, North Carolina. And along with me is attorney Matt Dellinger, who's advising us, through this process. So, Jeremiah, thank you. You've taken care of about half of what I was going to speak to tonight, so this will be a little bit shorter. Commissioner Cecina, this might address your question regarding the right-of-way. You are correct that DOT does not have fee title to Triangle Circle. Therein lies the issue. The original approval for Rivercross Commercial required for this phase to have 3 different components for off-site road improvements, in addition to the on-site work that needs to be done. And that off-site road improvements all take place on the intersection of Optimus Club and Triangle Circle. So the 3 requirements that are imposed on the commercial phase of the development are: 1 is to extend the right turn lane on Optimus Club. 2 is to widen Triangle Circle and install a left turn lane going northbound on Triangle Circle onto Optimus Club. And 3, as Jeremiah has mentioned, to install a traffic signal when such is warranted by DOT. The challenge for us has come about with DOT not having fee title to Triangle Circle. If they had the normal 60-foot wide right-of-way on Triangle Circle, we would not be here tonight. We would have had the improvements done by now and been well on the way with the development. However, since they don't have the right-of-way, then the widening of the road and installation of left turn lane cannot happen without acquiring right-of-way from the property owners in that area. We hired a professional right-of-way consultants to make sure that we were getting the best opportunity to complete these acquisitions of right-of-way. We hired them a year ago. They spent a lot of time and were successful in negotiating rights-of-way with a couple of the property owners there, but got what they said were hard no's from 2 of the property owners that that right-of-way needs to be acquired from their property in order for that left turn lane to go in. I won't bore you with the details of it all. The details from the right-of-way consultants are included in your packet. I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I don't want to take your time to go through it all. The rights-of-way that we did acquire over there, I want everybody to know we paid above appraised value. The 2 people that were dissenting, we offered them above appraised value. When they again denied, the question was asked of them, well, what will you sell it for? Let's get a number. I mean, I think somebody in the public meeting said, well, everything's for sale at a price. You know, I believe that too. Until you find somebody that says, no, it's not available at any price. And we've encountered that with 2 of the owners there. Nice people, nothing against them. They just don't want to sell. So we are where we are, and as Jeremiah mentioned, thankfully there is a process in your UDO that deals with these types of issues, where we could come in, demonstrate to you that we have used diligent, reasonable efforts to acquire the rights-of-way. People can't do it, and the UDO specifically says we bring it back to this body, and that the Board of Commissioners can consider whether or not to allow the project to go forward absent that that particular condition of the approval. I'd like to remind everybody that if the project goes forward, 2 of the conditions of approval still stand. The right turn lane, the extension of the right turn lane on Optimus Club will stand. When DOT does the study and finds that that it's warranted, we have to install the signal. So the public does still get benefits from this, that even the people at DOT have told us that there's no money anywhere to be able to improve that intersection, and I guess that's why they're looking to us to do it. One other thing I want to mention is that we have spent a lot of time and money with traffic consultants, civil engineers, to try to find an alternative. If we can't do the left turn lane, what can we do? And talked with staff through some of that as well. And we've had at least 2 phone calls that I can remember with staff, DOT, us, engineers, trying to understand, is there a solution to this? And the bottom line is, without boring you with all the different things that were looked at and what can we do here and here, ultimately we could not get a solution that DOT was going to think was going to be okay. So we believe we've exhausted all resources to try to meet this condition. In summary, we're not asking to increase density. We're not asking to change the development that was approved 10 years ago. All we're asking is to, per the county's UDO, please consider allowing the project to go forward without this condition. And we're happy to answer questions tonight. We're happy to take questions if the planning board has someone they're deliberating. And we are available, to staff, commissioners, between now and when the hearing or the meeting takes place on the 17th. And even if you have questions at that meeting, we'd be happy to answer them. We want to get you all the information that you need to be able to make the decision that you believe is best.
Do
Thank you.
the folks that don't want to have this, are they concerned about the density or the traffic? Or what were they concerned about? Can you tell?
I have no idea. They don't, we're not adding density, to the original development. And this intersection is like half a mile down the road from the development. I don't know what their concern is, other than they just don't want it.
They don't want the development at all.
No, I
can add
think-
a little bit
yeah.
to that, and it's in the notes in the packet. I'm Matt Dellinger, 3000 Gray Road, Davidson. One of the individuals has a garden, and he doesn't
I'm
want
sorry?
any. One of the individuals has a garden along the roadway that he doesn't want to have impacted by any right-of-way, and I think he's identified that to the right-of-way agents. And the other individual just simply seemed to just not have any interest in allowing it, period.
So in the packet, you've got a parcel 001 where you offered them $3,150. Is that the correct amount?
That was the offer above the appraised value that had been offered and rejected. And again, as Brad mentioned, what is the price? And there's never going to be a price.
Okay, and then parcel number 7007, you offered them $8,450. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And these numbers were all based on appraisals that were done by Professional Property Services, the right-of-way agent. This is one of the reasons that we turned it over to them to deal with it, because they've dealt with these things before, and they've told us that it all starts with first doing an appraisal of what the right-of-way that we'd be acquiring for DOT, what would the value of that right-of-way be? And they do it by professional appraisal, and then, of course, you pay more. And that's what we did.
I can imagine that folks are pretty unhappy with the DOT concerning Triangle itself. That should have been done 4 years ago. And so when you tell folks that there's going to be a signalization there, they're like, well, is it in my lifetime? Is it in my children's lifetime? Is it my grandchildren's lifetime? I think that's part of the issue, because no one knows when they'll actually get to your signalization. I know that you can't answer that question, but I'm saying I imagine that's part of the issue. I mean, for those of us that actually live off of 16 in the eastern part of the county, we were supposed to get Triangle and the signalization synced up with all the other ones over on, as you go up 16, taken care of before the park got done, and well, that got done way earlier than the signalization did. So I'm guessing that's probably part of the issue is who knows when the signalization is going to come. Even if you paid for it, and getting their permission is going to be quite an issue, I would imagine.
DOT has looked at a recent study that we did to try to find out when will the signal get there. So we did updated traffic reports. So we did, all of this was done in the last few months to count what the existing traffic was. And at the end of that, we turned to DOT and said, okay, here's all the data. Can we put a signal in now? They said no. So, okay, when can we do it? Well, when it's warranted.
We'll think about it, yeah.
Yeah,
We've
when
heard
it's
that once or
warranted.
twice, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
Anyone else have anything for the applicants? All right, then I'll open the public hearing for PD 2014-2A7.
Thank you for considering this. We appreciate it.
First on the list, we have Patty Corn.
Patty Corn, 3165 Lakeshore Road, South Denver. On behalf of the Denver Beautification Committee, I respectfully request that the commissioners deny this zoning request. The number one priority in Denver is road improvements. We need road improvements before we need anything else. Approving the developer's request sets a bad precedent of allowing developers to make promises of road improvements that they can't keep. The county has allowed 500 new homes in this development to be built before all required road improvements in the original approval have been completed. That's 228 apartments, 135 single-family homes, all but about 44 have been built, and 133 townhomes. Despite building 500 new homes, the only significant road improvements have been turn lanes into the site, a right-hand turn lane on Optimus Club Road to Triangle Circle, which is appreciated, and a traffic light on Business 16, Denver's main street, which just impedes the flow of traffic on our main street because now everybody has to stop on Highway Business 16 because of this development where we previously didn't have to stop. The original developer, the subsequent developers, and the county failed to complete due diligence to ensure the developers own the land for a road improvement prior to approving the original development and the subsequent subdivisions into the 3 tracks, single-family homes, apartments, and commercial. The traffic impact analysis states that rights-of-way need to be acquired in order to implement some of the improvements and that this issue should be reviewed. Denver residents should not have to pay the price of other people's mistakes or bear the burden of the developers and the county's lack of due diligence. The level of service at this intersection is already LOSF. So approving more townhomes and more commercial space is without that required road improvement is just going to make it worse. Residents can live with the loss of 100,000 square feet of commercial space and 40 new townhomes. Letting the developer off the hook for a road improvement that was in the original approval just transfers the cost of that road improvement to the residents. We're spending more time sitting in traffic, we're incurring more wear and tear on our vehicles while idling, and there's an adverse environmental impact. So please don't allow developers to make their money and leave local drivers, taxpayers, and voters stuck with the aftermath. And finally, results matter, not effort expended.
Thank you. Next, we have Martin Oaks.
Yeah, Martin Oaks, 8057 Lucky Creek Lane, Denver, North Carolina. This is my fault. I had a lot to do with the specs, that the restrictions that are in this thing. The point of the whole exercise at the beginning was that the development had to pay for some local road improvements. It wasn't really important which improvements were made. I got the laundry list of what things that could be done, and that was the list, and so it was put into the development. It didn't have to be this specific one, but it was the one thing at the top of the second at the top of the list. What you should, I think, be doing is take the money that was going to be spent on this turn lane, and it's at least $80,000 in right-of-way, probably more, because I don't have all the numbers from their report, plus the construction costs, so I think we're talking $200,000 at least, and dump that into the transportation fund with the restriction that it got to be used within a half-mile of this development. There are a lot of other little things around there that could be done, but you don't need to figure them out now. You just take the money and put it in the fund and then look for things to do. My best example would be to take Triangle Circle at Business 16 at the south end and turn that into a 90-degree turn instead of what it is now, which is a dangerous one. And so that's what I would suggest. And just finally, one last point. Triangle Circle is not unique in terms of the right-of-way. Unity Church is the same. I'm sure you'll find that out if you try and do anything down there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have George Barr.
Good evening, George Barr, 7837 Live Oaks Drive, Denver, and speaking for Elba. So a prior commission held the developer at Stratford to actually performing results, the work required in their zoning, and it held their project up for months, if not a year, but they got it done, and now they're expanding as they were permitted to do. I drive by that intersection at least twice a day, works fine, so thank you, prior commissions. And a different prior commission let a school go in on 16 without a dedicated right turn lane off of 16 onto Galway. What a freaking mess. And I drive by that a couple times a day. I should say I crawl by it most of the time, twice a day. Doesn't matter northbound, southbound, it's a freaking mess. And we spend sheriff's deputies' time trying to mitigate that nonsense. So here we have a developer asking for forbearance, and Patty's right. The cost always falls on the people who drive and the voters and property owners. So there would be heavy cost to people who drive through there, and if that development is completed, it'll be even heavier than it is now, because that's a major cut through over to Optimus Club to get to 4-lane 16. But here to me, we've got an opportunity as a county to make a difference in the way our traffic is handled. Most of the time we have absolutely nothing to say about anything because it's always NC DOT. Well, this time it's not NC DOT, and we have the opportunity to mitigate our own traffic issues by turning this down and letting the traffic that's going through there now go through without adding whatever traffic would come from a commercial development and more townhomes. So Elba requests the planning board and the commission to turn this down. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, having no one else signed up to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed, and we'll move on to UDO 2025-1, or excuse me, -5.
So UDO Proposed Amendment 2025-5, Whitney Hodges with WH Consulting is the applicant in this case, and this is a request to amend the Lincoln County Unified Development Ordinance, specifically Article 2.4.9B, to include a new type of planned development district. This would be planned development residential senior housing. The proposed amendment includes intent language, a list of standards and criteria for development sites to be designed to, such as minimum lot sizes, setbacks, minimum lot widths, building coverage, impervious coverage, and the like. And those are summarized in a table that's included with the proposed text that the applicant submitted with their application. The purpose of the proposed amendment is to provide intentional site design criteria for residential developments serving an age-restricted population as defined by the Housing for Older Persons Act of 1995. As you may recall, last year, the Board of Commissioners approved an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance that enacted two new dimensional charts for planned development residential. There's the planned development residential conventional type and the conservation type. The distinction being planned development residential conservation has double the required open space in exchange for smaller lot sizes. That's quarter-acre lot sizes. This proposed amendment has smaller lot sizes than that, again, because it's targeted for or intended for age-restricted communities. The planning staff has recommended approval of this request. You have our proposed statement in your packet. I will say that although the applicant's proposed ordinance language indicates that this request would maintain established densities, one thing that the staff would like to discuss a little further, maybe tweak some of what's proposed here, is there is no proposed maximum density for single-family detached housing types in this new PDR senior housing. The reduced minimum lot size of 6,600 square feet would essentially increase the potential density for single-family detached, and the applicant has not indicated a max in their table a maximum density. They did indicate that their intent is to maintain the established densities. So if there's one thing that the staff would like to maybe work with the boards on, is tweaking that part of this amendment. That's going to be important for us administratively if this is approved, to make sure that future applicants are very clear that this does not allow for a higher density than the other PDR types. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me on this request.
Anyone have any questions for Jeremiah?
So is it reasonable to hold off on this until you get it tweaked instead of us saying yes or no and then coming back and going back and forth? Wouldn't it be just as reasonable for you guys to figure something out and then come back to us and say, this is what we really like to do? Because I'm thinking you're talking about Three Cherry Way and Trilogy and those areas.
So we felt like the application that was submitted is certainly relevant, and this would be the appropriate forum to work through any concerns that the boards might have and that the staff might have with some of the nuances of the language that's proposed here. Conceptually, staff supports what's being proposed here and the intent, providing design flexibility without increasing the density. But we just want to make sure those safeguards are in place, that the ordinance language is tight and easy for us to enforce.
I would personally like to see it complete before we do any voting on this thing. And so I would like to see us table this. And I'd like to see us table this until the staff has completed everything they'd like to do on it and come back to us and say, this is our final shot at this thing, instead of, well, we might want to do this, or we might want to do that at a later date. And so my recommendation is we table this until January.
Okay, do you want to finish?
I'll make that a motion.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and finish this public hearing? And so
Sure.
that way
Yeah, that'd be
get
fine.
everything out. and then
Absolutely.
We can,
Sure.
okay.
And to confirm, do you want to allow the planning board to go ahead and deliberate it and then bring back a suggestion?
No, ma'am, I think that we need to table this.
Or just
until-
table it completely and then have?
until they come back and say, this is our final draft on this, as opposed to, we don't like this portion of it, or we don't like that portion of it, that would be my recommendation.
Well, I don't think there's going to be an additional draft, correct me if I'm wrong, because this was submitted by someone outside. Our staff did not draft this.
Well, then I
That's
would-
correct.
Well, then I would say that we need to wait until our staff is happy with all the changes on it, if there's any of the changes on this. 'Cause apparently, we're not happy with this as it sits.
So our staff has recommended approval, again, because conceptually, we agree with what the intent here. Our only holdup is this one little nuance that we feel like it would be appropriate to work through during the deliberations with the planning board. And if they are satisfied with maybe a tweak that the applicant is willing to agree to, then we feel like this could move forward if the boards were amenable to that.
I'd like to see the final draft before I vote on it.
So here's my suggestion, if I may. I suggest allowing the hearing to take place, the planning board to deliberate, and as Jeremiah said, review the possible changes that our staff see are important, and then allow the planning board to bring that back to this board. And then if you're not happy with that version, then you can send it back to the planning board for additional deliberations. You can deny it or approve it. But I suggest allowing it to go to the planning board to be deliberated and possibly tweaked, and then have that version come back to us.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, thank you. So anything else for Jeremiah? Any questions for Jeremiah?
Just a question, when you talk about the density, are you talking about less than 50% or maintaining it at that 50% level?
So the number of homes per acre on an overall basis, gross acreage, so total number of homes divided by gross acreage. Right now, IT staff, if you wouldn't mind navigating to the dimensional chart, I think it's potentially page 5. Let's go to page 6. So this is the new proposed chart for plan development, residential, senior housing. And under single-family detached, that first column, you'll see that the density field is blank, that first cell. Now, that is the case in the 2 plan development residential tables that we have now, because the mechanism that Lincoln County has chosen to use as of, I think, August of last year, when the PDR standards were amended, is minimum lot size, not overall density for single-family detached in planned developments. Because of the proposal here to lower the minimum lot size, it seems that it would be necessary, if you're not going to allow density to increase with this type of plan development, it would seem that it would be necessary to define a maximum units per acre, i.e. density. Because otherwise, at 6,600 square foot lots, you could be 3 units an acre, maybe slightly higher. Whereas with plan development, residential conservation, for example, same thing, 50% open space, just like what's proposed here, but quarter acre lot sizes, you're right at 2 units an acre. So if the intent is to not increase density, but allow flexibility with lot widths, building coverage for these senior housing projects without increasing density, well, with the lower lot size, we're going to have to define a maximum density here. And that just breaks from the pattern that we've done with other types of plan developments. I think honestly, it's potentially just an oversight as part of their proposal. And because we don't define it in our 2 PDR charts that we have now, the applicant chose not to break from that formatting and stick with what we have, but it seems that it'll be necessary if their intent is to not increase density with this proposal. So to boil it down, for staff to feel comfortable that, yes, this achieves what the language says is it's intending to achieve, we need a number in that first cell under single-family detached.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying I'd like to see something definite on here and be done with it, as opposed to come back 2 or 3 times and go, oops, we made a mistake, or oops, we should have done this or should have done that. I'd like to see it. And we spent a lot of time on the UDO, as did a number of citizen groups on the UDO, and now we're going to change it less than a year out. And it just seems that we should be absolutely certain what we want to do before we make any decisions.
Right.
That's my thought. And as this county grows, the senior housing is going to become more and more important.
Okay. Any questions, any additional questions or comments for Jeremiah? Okay, is the applicant here? If you would state your name and address when you get to the podium.
Whitney Hodges, 309 Hamilton Street, Johnson City, Tennessee. Jeremiah is correct. It was an oversight on my part when it comes to this chart. I wanted to make sure that because you guys had worked on this UDO for so long, to keep that integrity. And so we would be happy to entertain a density maximum in that regard. What I wanted to share, and I think it's just maybe some reasons why this ordinance is coming back to you, because like you just said, you spent a lot of time, and I'm glad that you're able to have these conversations in public so that we can take this to the planning board and bring it back with some finer grain language. I guess you can, I'm watching a mouse move. Okay. So if we go to the next slide. Some of the reasons that when you're looking at 55 and older populations, that they are some really great assets in a community is when you're thinking about community infrastructure, there are some gains here. So typically in a 55 and older in subdivision, they have 50% fewer daily trips because they have some flexible time. That kind of makes some sense. Oftentimes, because they have a lower number of people per house, that does also translate to some lower costs in providing services. In the next slide, part of those services are for schools. While I cannot say that they don't have school children, they do often have fewer school children, but still maintain, contribute to the local property taxes. And then this group, they're starting to get to that retirement age, so they're becoming your volunteers. They're really engaged in the community, especially within the local economy. What I wanted to show to you in the next slide is what this might look like on the ground. So one of the things about a low-cost living is being able to have the grounds kind of be maintained by the HOA. In the client that I work for, they have a kind of a design where your private space is an inner courtyard, and so everything around it would be in the HOA. And so on the left, you see a rendering, and on the right is the built environment. And in the next slide, just to kind of, sometimes people like me like to bring pretty pictures. And this is about this would be similar to what the amendment would propose. I think this open space might be 48% instead of 50%, but it's a similar lot size and that kind of thing. And in the next slide, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, I wanted to show how those pretty pictures end up in the real world. And so this is across the river of where a similar cluster style development that has all of those elements that you have in your conservation, but just for senior housing. I am here for any questions you might have.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you don't have issues with schools. We had to build a fire station and a medic station next to Trilogy. Because people falling out all the time. I understand that. I've used our medics a couple times. And so do you have any idea where you want to put this?
So at the moment, I think our client is working with some people out near the East Lincoln High School.
Okay. And that would be a great place for it because we already have a fire station there and a medic station.
But the text amendment would allow it anywhere, and I do want to make sure that
I got
that is
that.
clear. But those are some site design questions that as they come through, you can get down into the peculiars.
Sure. But you understand my point.
Oh, I definitely understand your point.
Okay.
Pictured here, do you happen to know the density of illustrated development picture?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get you that information before final action. He asked about the density, and I'll be sure to have that for the final action of this particular development.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Okay.
Thank you for your time.
I will open the public hearing, and seeing no one else signed up to speak. You want to speak about it, Martin?
And again, Martin Oaks, 8057 Lucky Creek Lane, Denver. As a senior myself, I'm kind of prone to this kind of thing. But I think that if we keep the overall density at the same as what we currently have, then there's not an issue. But at a higher level thing, when you're thinking about doing things that are, quote, senior projects, how do you ensure that only seniors buy them? Only seniors live them? If you're making special conditions, what makes that special? How do you make sure that it's only senior stuff? That's I think, a higher level question that nobody has addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, having no one else signed up to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We'll
Commissioner
take
Lumber,
Go ahead.
can I make a statement before you release the planning board?
Yes.
I want to circle back to something that was talked about in the first hearing about providing funds to the county for the improvement of roads. We no longer do that. And we no longer do that because the county does not build roads and because the statute that allows counties to receive money for road improvements from developers as part of the development regulations in Chapter 160D also requires that the county provide those funds to the city. Well, there is no municipality in the eastern part of the county. We would technically, by law, have to provide any funds provided to us in lieu of road improvements to the city of Lincoln for improvements in Denver. The city of Lincoln, when I asked their attorney about this, said we would never accept those. So that portion that used to specifically allow that in the UDO was removed a while back. There is a broad allowance for any other things that the boards do find relevant, but I did want to point that out because the last thing I want is the planning board to go deliberate and say, well, why don't we make them pay funds to the county? We don't allow that anymore, and while it is allowed under law, the law does also require that we provide it to the municipality, and we can't provide funds to the city of Lincoln to make road improvements in Denver. So I just wanted to point that out in case anybody was considering that during this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so planning board will move to room 310 if you want to go with those guys to hear their deliberation. You're more than welcome. So we'll take a quick 5-minute break.
All right, tonight's last zoning case, special use permit number 527. Cheryl and Daniel Gingrich are the applicants in this case, and they're requesting a special use permit to operate a bed and breakfast in the residential single-family district. This request involves a 0.78 acre parcel located at 8112 Tadlock Trail in Catawba Springs Township. All of the surrounding properties are also located in that same RSF zoning district, and land uses in this area are residential. This property is located in an area designated by the land use plan as single-family neighborhood, suitable for single-family homes at densities up to 2 units per acre. The UDO defines a bed and breakfast as a building designed and built as a detached single-family home containing 1 or more guest rooms for an overnight stay, which are rented at a daily rate and where breakfast is the only meal served to guests. I've included in the hearing packet the specific use standards for bed and breakfast. That's the second page of your packet there. You've got the required standards that the applicant would have to meet. The applicant has submitted with their application their proposed findings of fact, as well as their proposed site plan showing the existing home located on the property, how the unit would be accessed. They'll speak in more detail, I'm sure, about the layout of the house, but basically this is a walkout basement where the rental unit would be located. And so you have on their site plan there a lot of the existing conditions and a few labels regarding how the unit would be accessed. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Is this a form of a short-term rental?
There you go.
So regardless of whether this is long-term or short-term rental, administratively, we don't make a distinction. The distinction that's made here is based on the definition of single-family detached, which is designed for a structure designed to be occupied by one family. If any portion of the structure is going to be used as a residence for someone other than the single family that occupies that structure, then it's no longer a single family detached. It's either a duplex, or in the case of if it meets this definition of bed and breakfast, it could be a bed and breakfast. But that requires a special use permit in the residential single family district. Another option is boarding house, which has a separate definition, but boarding houses are not permitted in this zoning district. So the options here are turned into a duplex or turned into a bed and breakfast if they're wanting to rent out a portion of the structure.
Does this seem odd to anybody but me? That we have short-term rentals all over Westport that we can't do a darn thing about, and yet, and I'm not necessarily opposed to this, I'm just saying, it seems very odd to me that we've got,
But the good thing is, these folks are living there, right?
Correct, and that
They're
is
there, so
required.
they're just renting out the basement. That's a lot different than
Oh, absolutely. I got
short-term
that. It's
rental
just-
that just do what they want.
I'm with you, I just find it odd that we can do something about this. We can't do something about short-term rentals. Because if they're living upstairs, they're gonna make sure it's not crazy. Yeah, I got that. I'm just,
Yeah, to answer your question, Commissioner Cecina, the distinction that our staff is tasked with making is whole home rental versus partial home rental.
I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is the applicant here?
I believe so.
Right. They want to step forward?
Good evening. I'm Sherry Gingrich. This is my husband, Dan, and we're at 8112 Tadlock in Denver. And as Jeremiah said, we're looking to add a special use permit for a bed and breakfast at our home. We are a 2-story, 4-bedroom house, and we do have a walkout basement. We are on the lake. As background, we contacted the Lincoln County Zoning Department by phone in January of '24 and were told there were no concerns with us renting a portion of our walkout basement as a short-term rental space. With that information, we launched an Airbnb, a short-term rental, in March of '24, and for 16 months, we hosted over 60 singles and couples, received all 5-star reviews from those guests for our accommodations and hospitality, and are not aware of any issues from our guests. And of course, we were in residence the whole time. We hosted international travelers visiting family, attendees to local yoga and equestrian events, local folks looking for a quiet getaway, a published author wanting a quiet space to write his next novel, a surgeon from Virginia who just needed a break from his reality, folks attending local weddings, anniversary and birthday couples, guests of local real estate agents who were seeking a home to purchase, and even our neighbor's family when they came to visit. We were pleased with the success of our Lake Life retreat, and we paid appropriate taxes for the rental activity. This summer, after an anonymous call, the county notified us that we were in violation of the single-family residential zoning code, and while that contradicted the information we got by phone in January of '24, we stopped all rentals in July to research our options. Based on what we learned from our review of the UDO, our discussions with the county planning and inspection team and external legal counsel, the easiest and most lucrative option for us would be to rent the whole house, like Mr. Cessna said. If I said that correctly, sorry. Okay, sorry. So we could leave and go stay at our mountain property in western North Carolina and rent our whole home to 12 guests, and we wouldn't have to come ask for permission from you to do so. However, our preference is to continue to be a primary resident at Tadlock and just rent out a portion of our home to up to 4 guests. Our plan is to offer the space to those seeking short-term rentals for up to 4 guests via 1 reservation. And we have to meet certain criteria that are in the packet for us to do so. So first, we have to make sure there's no impact to public health and safety. And to do that, we have appropriate smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in the space. We'll continue to follow all the fire safety standards. We'll ensure our guests are identity verified by either Airbnb or a similar platform. And we'll continue to have external security cameras to monitor the safety and security of our home and neighborhood. We have to make sure all the requirements that Jeremiah listed in the packet are met. And so those include a designated parking space, which we have, bedroom, bathroom, living areas. No meals will be provided, and there will be no cooking facilities in the individual room. We don't have to make any modifications to the exterior, so we meet that criteria. I will operate the B&B, and we will remain in residence of the property. So with that, we actually meet all 6 of the specific use standards as defined in the UDO. The third criteria is that there is no impact to the value of the adjoining property. The property won't change in any way from today. It'll continue to be and look like a family residence. With a maximum of 4 guests, plus Dan and I, there's no difference to parking or traffic or noise than the homes of our neighbors with multiple teenagers, many cars, residents who operate their business out of their home, or those who host family and friends regularly. So we don't believe we're changing the value of any of our adjoining properties. And lastly is our operation needs to be in harmony with the area. So we're residential. We do have several active full home vacation rentals in our neighborhood, and we're not going to change that by offering a portion of our home as a rental. As a matter of fact, multiple neighbors reported to us that they never even knew we had guests during that period that we were operating. So allowing Dan and I to remain as full-time residents and host a maximum of 4 guests will not change the residential nature of our home or the neighborhood. In fact, we believe it would be less of a potential disruption than a whole home vacation rental, that some of which are already operating in our area. So since we meet all the defined criteria, we are respectfully requesting you approve our special use permit. We are eager to resume hosting the kinds of guests that we hosted before and being at the home to manage those guests as needed. In addition to tax revenue, we also believe we're doing a service to the larger community, where there are very limited options available to find overnight accommodations in the Denver area. So with that, I will thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Find it pretty odd, too?
We found it odd when we got the violation notice, yes, sir.
I can imagine that if you were doing something you weren't supposed to, I'd be getting lots of phone calls. I get phone calls about everybody else, but I haven't got any about you.
Well, good, I'm glad to hear that,
Congratulations.
thank you.
As you alluded to, you know, by us staying there, we manage the situation. In other words, it isn't turned into, as we've seen other houses where they're short-term rental and there's 10 or 15 people staying at it and it turns into a noise and, you know, party house, and that's not what we're trying to do. It's just,
Yes, it does.
it's allowing us to keep control of the situation and keep it quiet. And, you know, people that do come, they're looking, you know, it's two people or, you know, a child or whatever, and they're just looking to get away from all the nuts, so to speak.
So you're a bed and breakfast, but you're not offering breakfast.
Well,
We do not plan to do that. We currently, in the facility, there's actually a stove. So currently, they were allowed to cook their own meals. In the UDO, that doesn't allow that. So we will have to move, and we'll move that stove out of there, and they won't have access to be able to cook any meals. So we might do a snack basket or something for them, but no, we won't be providing any meals. The UDO doesn't require that. It says if you are providing a meal, you may only provide breakfast, but we're choosing not to. I don't want to be up cooking breakfast for our guests every day.
You can put a Pop-Tart in the box.
Pardon?
You can put a Pop-Tart in there.
We could, yeah, yeah. Little oatmeal things, you just pour hot water in, yeah. Oh, we learned down at Pledge the Pink a couple weeks ago, we were volunteering Pledge the Pink. Uncrustables are like apparently the bomb for all of our walkers and our marathoners, so I guess we could provide Uncrustables.
We were in
anyway.
we were in Banner Elk this past weekend, and had a golf thing, and they didn't offer, it was allegedly a bed and breakfast as well, and they had lots of muffins and a little, you know, it wasn't a bed and breakfast, but it was nice.
Ms. Gingrich,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you pretty much took care of it, but just to solidify, did you prepare the proposed findings of facts that were
We did.
submitted? And
Yes.
you wish to incorporate those as part of your testimony?
Yes, please.
since we met with the county and they had the farm marshal and
Yeah.
all the other people there, and we answered all their questions, and anything we didn't, you know, we put into that for you. So we were making sure that we met everybody's criteria, you know, that they wanted.
Chairman Lumberger, based on this information, I would like to propose we table this until the second meeting in November. And I would like to get some more information on the inspections that they would have to do to qualify for from the state level on their twice annually, and who would be performing those, based on North Carolina guidelines for inns.
So you're making a motion to table until
November 17th.
November the 17th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, does everybody understand that motion?
Sure.
Question.
You have a question?
Just for a point of clarity, so two questions. One, how many units do you actually rent out? Is it just one single unit?
It would just
up
be
to four-
one for up to four
people?
guests in one
And-
unit, one
and
reservation.
what is your maximum duration that people would be allowed to stay in that unit? Is it like a week, 2 weeks, 3 months?
We have actually not defined a maximum. In the time that we did operate, the max that we ever had was 7 days. We certainly would be open to having a max if that's if that's a preference from the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to table this decision until November the 17th. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I couldn't hear very good. What was the reason for tabling?
To find out who would be doing the inspections, just a quick search, and it was lodging, and any lodging have to have twice annual inspections, especially for a bed and breakfast in the state of North Carolina, and to find out who would be providing those services and to what expense that would be.
Can't find that out.
Well, I think we're going to have to ask environmental health to give us some clarity, and I sent a text to Andrew just earlier because there's a couple of differentiations here, and this may be one of the ones that falls into an exempted area under the food and lodging rules based off the number of units or the number of guests. And there are durations tied to it. That's why I was asking specific questions to that. But I do think to get a clear answer, we'd need to follow up with them to make sure, because there has been some law change, I think, in a few years back that that interpreted bed and breakfast homes, bed and breakfast inns, and then what was exempted. So they've been reclassified in a couple of structures.
Okay. Okay. So everybody understands the motion and the reasoning behind the motion? All right, go ahead.
So when will it come back?
17th.
2 weeks, okay.
Yeah. At our next meeting.
Okay.
That's fine. So everybody understand this motion? All right. Any further discussion about it? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. We will table this until the decision until November the 17th.
Okay. And I'm sorry to ask because I don't understand the process, but would we come back to
Yes,
that
ma'am.
meeting for further discussion?
Yes, ma'am. If we
Okay.
have any additional questions for you, we'll run them through Andrew and his
Okay.
staff, or you can, more than welcome to come back.
And that's the 10 o'clock in the morning
That's right.
meeting.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right, thank y'all.
Is that something that, I mean, whatever the questions are, can we find out what they are so we can help? In other words, if you're not able to.
Yeah, we'll
we
run them
can
through,
contact.
we'll run them through Andrew and his staff, and then Jeremiah.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Thank y'all.
everyone.
All right. So I'm going to close the public hearing for this, and we will move on to number 4, transportation funding policy. Andrew Bryant.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tonight, I bring before you the proposed transportation funding policy. This fund looks to provide a structure to disperse or potentially disperse those dollars that were collected through excess excise tax collections over the past many years, and it continued to accrue. I'll go over a quick summary of the purpose of the fund and the components contained therein. There's also a companion agenda item after this on how we would enter into reimbursement agreements that would be subject to this fund. So the fund, like I said, is made up and has been funded in the past by excise tax payments that have exceeded this $858,000 mark, which is considered the base amount. This fund was started in FY15. And has, through accruals and disbursements, has a balance of around $3 million at the present time. The purpose of this fund is not to just continually accrue dollars. It is to use those dollars to help with transportation projects. And what we're trying to do with this is to set the structure around those items. So with those potential items to fund, we have several things we can fund with this project, and this fund attempts to contemplate many of those. Obviously, partnering with the state on large transportation projects, state transportation improvement program projects. I had, before this board, back in the spring, set up to fund about $2 million in betterments for the NC 73 widening project, just for that project to be kicked down the road for another decade. So that would be an example of partnering with the State Transportation Improvement Program. We could also partner with them on a smaller scale project than 73 to provide funds to help advance a project. Maybe a $5 million project is something we could potentially move along. Again, the project betterment that I just mentioned, access improvement projects, that's when how a large portion of this fund has been expended over the past 4 or 5 fiscal years, is through partnering with Lincoln County Schools to improve access and queuing on their school sites. And then also the private sector partnership opportunities where large-scale projects exist that have private funding associated with them. We could enter into those reimbursement agreements that I mentioned a minute ago to partner with the private sector to advance a large-scale project that so often one single project can't advance on their own. So this would look to leverage our funding opportunities. That could be done through reimbursement agreement. We can incorporate that reimbursement agreement into development agreements that we can set up. And 2 other components of this is that in order to fund these projects, we have to establish a capital improvement plan for the use of these dollars. And that is something that we could look to develop as we move forward with this. One important part of this is so often there are transportation improvement projects that impact public water and sewer utility infrastructure in the proximity of these projects, where you're doing a large-scale intersection project or a widening project. You could also impact that water and sewer utility, so we would have some capital improvement programming kind of direction already set by those projects, so that's something to keep in mind. And one of the things that comes to mind when we're talking about the private sector partnership opportunities is that they would be the ones doing the work on these projects. We would be providing our partnership funds to them. But while doing that, in order to make sure that we're spending these public dollars appropriately and being fiscally responsible with those, they do have to follow our public bidding requirements, and we hold them to those requirements. If for some reason they do not follow those public bidding requirements, they aren't due those funds. This happened with the public utility project about 5 years ago. We entered into a reimbursement agreement. They didn't follow the bidding requirements, and they paid for the whole project. We saved about $500,000 because they didn't check one simple little box, but it was a very important box. In order to, again, I mentioned we had about $3 million in funds. It's a pretty decent balance of funds, but it doesn't go a terribly long way in the transportation realm. We want to make sure we're using these funds smartly when we have competing requests for projects. So I set up a very simple 10-point scoring system for these items that looks to address these 10 categories on a 5-point scale on each of them. To evaluate them against one another. We would score all projects. In order to even be considered to be brought before the board for y'all's consideration, it would have to essentially get 50% of the available points. 25 points on those projects would be required, again, for y'all's consideration. And the final point of this, I just want to make sure I see where it's covered, is that the if it was a private funding partnership, they have to bring at least 50% of the funds to the table. That's contained in section 4D, that 50% of the funds have to be provided by the private developer. So we won't carry the majority of any project if a partnership is considered. That doesn't apply to things like state transportation improvement program, school system partnerships. That just applies to the private funding opportunity. And at the very bottom of this policy, in section 6, it shows what projects have been funded with this, and we would look to continually build that list just to show the investments of the fund over time. But that's all I have to discuss on this item. We're formally prepared. If there are any questions, we can certainly address those items.
Andrew, is there any way from the private sector partnership we could change that to 60% versus 50%?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's at the discretion of the board if you want to do that. Now, I do want to thank Andrew real quick on this because this was a discussion we had about a month ago or so.
We had one of the work sessions.
Yeah, you remember the work session, he brought up that we were working on this prioritization model. So again, this is really to help you because we do have finite funds, and it's to help to leverage these funds to the most impact because they aren't that much. But for those developers that are willing to put in, our initial concept was a 50%, but 60%, I mean, that's a decision the board wants to make to leverage that. If that'll give them a higher rating in the number on how the score goes.
Well, I mean, I'd like to see 60% because it's their project, and then plus 2, it was allow those funds to be distributed more. We'd have more funds available.
As the manager alluded to, that's completely at your discretion.
So just 60. Everybody agrees with 60%? I think it's a great policy, and I like the score. It's a whole lot less than what DOT has. I was just a little disappointed in that. So.
We can, and this fund certainly is a starting, or this policy is a starting point. This is the first time we've done this. I mean, I have no doubt we will learn something along the way, and there'll be an opportunity to make edits as necessary.
The only criteria I looked through the scoring though was the methodology or the thought process behind, when I look at the economic development potential and realistically when I envision some of this, that's going to be a lot more of where that private partnership money would come from. But yet, if you're only looking at the amount of, the employment center is 500 jobs, but they only get a 5-point basis. And when you compare that to, oh, well, there's a lot of crashes here, well, that could just be a bad intersection, but there might not be anything around there that would, you're not going to get anybody putting money into a bad crash situation if it's up on Zerluna Road because you can't see the stop sign, for instance, or, something of that nature. So I just didn't know with that methodology, if we're really looking to be business focused.
I mean, with a lot of these business projects too, I mean, the state miraculously comes up with economic development funding. I mean, that's the River View Road partnership we're talking about. So I think their opportunity is to leverage other money. Admittedly, there is no higher weighting on these different categories, one versus the other. They're all on the 1 to 5 point scale. Again, it's certainly something we can look to make a modification to if the board, I mean, these are meant to be objective criteria, but I mean, it's subjectively how you want to look at these is certainly something we can look at.
I look at it based on, well, to give you an example, we heard that earlier tonight. If you've got a Trilogy, for instance, it's a 55 and older neighborhood, and there's 500 homes there, they're going to take 0.75 of a trip every day. Well, if you do the math, if you've got an industry that has 500 jobs, and they're going to have more trips coming out of there more than likely than the one neighborhood that's going to have 500 homes in it, which would also, because they're over 55, no offense, bud, create more crashes because we do have an elderly population.
I mean, I would say, I mean, it's a nice, it is a nice round number of 50 right now, but I mean, I would, if that is something the board would really want to do is focus on that economic development component, or maybe another part of the scoring criteria, another category, if you want to double those points on those. I'm not, I mean, again, it's, at that point it becomes subjective on how you want to handle that, but I mean, again, then this is up to your discretion.
And if you have feedback, to your point, and Andrew mentioned earlier, we could look at weighting each category, because right now each category is a 1-to-1 for every category. A 5 in one category is equal to the 5 in the other. If we wanted to look and shift something to economic development or funding match, we could create a distributed weight model on those that would, to that point, so Andrew's point saying we could double that one category. But if we're going to do that, we may want to go back and go a little more granular. We could look at weighting each category based off really its true impact, and then that would help to distribute, to your point, on economic impact or other things that may not, they're still important, but they may not be as important to say 3 other categories that would have that higher weight ratio. We could mathematically do that and bring it back to you to take a look at.
Yeah, we don't mind doing that at all.
If this is not, let's just say this is going to be a housing development, then the economic development part of it wouldn't even play a part in it, so they'd get a 1, correct?
Correct.
Or a 0.
Correct. On that category, yes.
Right, but all the rest of them's going to build up, and we're going to get whatever it is, whatever applies to it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but if it's a business center or a business, then it's going to be able to be counted in whichever one there. Right.
Yes.
In its economic development part. Okay.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to make this too convoluted. I think we need to keep it simple.
I agree with that. And what we could do is, if we wanted to run a weighting model on it just to test the theory, we could do that. We could run a couple of examples to show you how the scoring would look, as hypothetical examples, put together a little bit of package that, put it versus the straight 1-to-1 ratio model. We could bring it back to a work session, look at it, and give the board this kind of a real kind of straight view of how this would look if we did weight it, and it might help you decide whether you feel like weighting it is important or not to a certain point.
Well, and I think too, if you look at it like C, traffic volumes and congestions, is that pre or current? I mean, when we're talking about this, is it the way it sits right now when they do the traffic studies, or is it what it's going to be projections based on after the homes are built or the industry's built? Because, that's going to vary greatly as well. So is it pre-development or post-development when you're looking at this? Because if you're looking at it on a post-development, that could even increase the trajectory higher, that this really takes a lot higher. This is what our people want to get done regardless of what it is. And those were the things I was just kind of looking at from a mathematical side of it, is how do we weight that to capture, You know, because it's a finite amount of funds. I mean, if it was a perfect world and it was all the funds available, it wouldn't really matter. But when it's a finite and everything, as we continue, if our economy continues to go and we continue to grow, then that's going to be, I guess, more sought after in the future. Then I would like to see it go towards the driving forces of where it really needs to be.
Well, why don't we workshop a couple of these categories? We'll come with some just suggestions on amendments. We'll run some scenarios on some residential and some non-residential components, and we can bring that back to y'all. I mean, there's no rush to get this across the finish line. So.
Do you need that in the form of a motion? No? Okay.
See that? All right,
Okay.
thank you.
And we don't need to talk about the next agenda item then.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Andrew. Look forward to that work session to see those scenarios run. So now we'll jump to number 6, public comments. This is where you as a citizen are able to address the board. You get 3 minutes as an individual and 5 minutes as a group. The group needs to be present and identified. Having no one signed up to speak, is there anyone in the room? All right, so then we'll move on to number 7, other business. Is there any other business to come before this board at this time? Okay, then we'll go to closed session. If someone would read the purpose of the closed session and make that in a form of motion, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Oh, I make the motion.
Okay.
All right. We're going to close session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged.
All right, we have a motion to go into closed session, and the motion has been read. Any further discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. We're in closed session. All right, we're out of closed session and back in open session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Hold on. No action was taken in closed session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Cecina. Any discussion? All in favor?